Looking for the TLDR on the Wixwell Yannica team? Well, you've come to the right place. I am going to give a quick overview on how the team works. We're going to go over the builds that you need for each of the champs. We're going to talk about starting the comp itself, and then we're going to talk about doing damage when it comes time to at about 150 turns in or so. So first off is how this comp works. You're going to be using Emic, Krisk. Now, this Krisk can also be swapped out for Anchorite. You're going to be using Brogni, Yannica, Wixwell, and Naya. And the basic idea for how this team works is it is specifically speed tuned to stay in speed with itself. So it doesn't really matter so much about what speed the boss is going. It just needs to stay in tune with itself. So you have Emic, who is constantly putting up the taunt and the unkillable, and you have Naya going back and forth to reset him. Emic is in the lead, so that Naya, her AI, will reset Emic. Krisk is in second spot because of his passive and how all of that works. And then we'll get into the team itself. Now, Emic and Naya continue to reset each other so that Emic can keep taunt up so that none of your other champs can get eaten. If another champ has gotten eaten, it's probably because Emic and Naya are out of turn with each other. From there, you have Brogni putting up shields. You have Krisk putting up his continuous heal and extending buffs. You have Emic putting up shields as well. You have Wixwell and Brogni and Chris all extending the buffs that you have and growing the shields. So between Wixwell and Brogni growing these shields, you grow your shield over time until which point where you let Mischief steal it from the correct person, usually Wixwell, and then use Yannica's A3 to do damage based on first A2 and then A3 to do damage based on the shield that was stolen. So this team here works quite well. We can talk a little bit about the builds themselves and the masteries. I'll show all of those. But the speeds, first off, this is all in Hydra, and I'll post the speeds as a graphic here as well. But in Hydra, it's 281. I have a 10 speed boost in Hydra, so that is normally 271. Frisk is at 248. Brogni is at 264. Yannica is at 246. Wixwell is at 248. And Naya is at 271. Now, we'll go through the presets here for everybody. Actually, I'm going to clip this out and yeah, all right. So here we'll go through the presets and speeds for everyone. These speeds are, again, relative to each other, so it doesn't really matter in relation to the boss as long as they are speed tuned relative to one another. Now, first off, you have Emic, who is going to start with his Trump Card Sanctuary and use this as much as possible. He's going to be running at 281 in Hydra, but he's a standard 271 Emic for Iron Twins and all those sorts of things. This is just because of the 10 speed boost for Hydra. Then you have Krisk. Krisk default on the A1. You have the priority set for the A2, and you have the A3 turned off. Krisk is going to be running at 248. You also want to make sure Krisk has enough resistance so that Mischief doesn't try to steal from Krisk should Mischief pop up. So make sure that is all set for that build. But again, default, number 1, and turned off. Then we get into Brogni. Brogni is 264, built for damage, but his AI is set up default on the A1, priority on the A2, and for his A3, you're going to start off with it to give the block buffs as well as his other buffs, and then you're going to turn it off from there because all you want him doing is consistently using his A2 to grow it and to extend the buffs. Then you've got Yannica. Technically, you can leave on her A3 if you want to. It really doesn't matter between leaving this on or off. I personally like to have it off so that it is always ready when it comes time to trigger and actually kill all the heads at the end. She is at 246. Then you have Wixwell, who is also at 248. The way he is set up is he uses his Deadbolt first as default. Priority is Tempest Knowledge, so you have that first. Deadbolt is just default for A1, and then you have Codex turned off. Now, this Codex is what you'll end up using at the end of the run to add enough shields to Wixwell along with Naya's to make sure he has 10 so that Mischief is going to steal from him when it comes time to do so. And as I said, 248 there. And last but not least, you have Naya. Naya A1 is default and her A2 is the priority. And again, you never have her doing the A3 until it's time at the very end of the run when it comes time to actually trigger and add enough buffs to Wixwell to be able to have Mischief steal them. All right, let's go talk about the actual builds themselves because these are also important. So first up, you have Emic. Emic or Naya, one or the other, not both necessarily, but one or the other should be in a shield set. You need an additional shield set to make sure that you have enough buffs on the champ so that Mischief steals at the end from someone other than Krisk. So make sure that you have either Emic or Naya in a shield set. I'll just show his masteries. I did these for Iron Twins and for other things, but these work in the comp that we're running. And he is booked for those other comps, like I mentioned. I also have Lightning Cage on him, just again for other purposes. But the way this damage works is it's really pretty capped out because of the way Hydra works. So it doesn't really matter to have some extra damage here and there unless you're trying to kill the heads to be able to get Mischief up and you need some damage there. So you could use something like Brimstone or other things depending on how ascended your Emic is. All right. So then we have Krisk. Krisk, ideally, is in a Reflex and Merciless set. Sadly, my Merciless is not that fantastic. So as you can see here, I have him in a Reflex and Refresh piece. It's doing enough that the team works, but in an ideal world, he would be in this or maybe Impulse, something along those lines to give as many cooldowns resets as possible. You do not want someone in Relentless. Relentless double turning will double turn people out of those buffs that they have. So not Relentless. You want to make sure it's either Reflex, Merciless, Impulse, things refresh, things that reset those cooldowns. Then we have Yannica. So Yannica here, you can see 236, built for damage. And she doesn't have to be in anything in particular other than just built for damage to make sure that you can kill some of the heads to be able to get Mischief up. Then we'll look at Brogni. Brogni, very similar to Krisk, is in a Reflex set, and he has a refresh piece, but again, Merciless or Impulse might be better. One thing I should have mentioned on Krisk I did before, but Krisk should be built with resistance. Brogni, this is a damage Brogni, again, to make sure that you get enough damage out to get through the heads. Another thing to keep note is that you want to make sure that Emic's defense is higher than Brogni's defense in terms of what shields get prioritized to stay on champs and extended and so on. Then we want to look at Wixwell. Wixwell, you want to make sure does not have accuracy, but is quite tanky with a good amount of defense here. Defense specifically is what you're focusing on for shields. And then you want to make sure that he is in Reflex, Merciless, Impulse, Refresh, things like that to make sure the cooldowns reset. The more you can do to reset the cooldowns, the better in terms of these comps. The faster the shields build up, but just in general, it's better for these builds overall. And then we will look at Naya. Naya is in Reflex and Impulse and a Refresh piece. She's at 261 and really just built. She has a little bit of accuracy here just from an old build that I had, but she really is just built for HP defense and the correct speed inside of this comp. So we've taken a look at all of the champs and how those work. So we're going to start off the run itself, and I'll show you how to start it off. Now, if you have a strong enough build on Brogni, you can just auto this with the presets and the defaults that I gave you. However, if your Brogni is, or if your Krisk maybe isn't quite strong enough to stand up to the particularly Head of Wrath battering through those shields, that's why I haven't moved from hard to brutal or nightmare, is that the Head of Wrath is so hits so hard that he starts going through some of the shields. But in this case, what I'll do to try to prevent that or help that is, so you're going to start out with MXA3, reset with Naya. This is that first turn where you're starting out and giving those extra buffs. You're going to extend those with Krisk. Now, you're going to extend those with Wixwell. And this is where some of the tactics come in, because depending on what difficulty you're on, you may need to balance damage around a little bit so that a head doesn't pop out too early. Because if you haven't built enough shields and Mischief steals it, you're not going to do your cap damage. So here, I actually like to go after the Head of Decay first so that he pops the shield onto himself, and then we can just batter into the Head of Decay for a little while before we go back over. So we're going to go back to her A1, and we're going to use Brogni's A2 to extend, right? Krisk, A2 to extend. And here's a weird one. So for me, I've been using the Wixwell A3 here just to give myself a little bit of extra defense so that Krisk, when he starts getting hit by Wrath and these others, doesn't end up losing his shield because of his ally protect. But again, that is just something I happen to do to make this a little bit easier on myself. And then you can click auto and let it go. I usually target it on Head of Decay, as I mentioned. And just let this go for a little bit, and we'll start seeing the shields grow over time. So now we're going to jump ahead to about turn 150. So this whole time we've been spreading the damage around between the different heads, making sure that none of them die and get a weird head popping up. But what we're trying to do now is kill the Head of Blight so that we don't have a poison cloud up while we're trying to do Yannica's damage at the very end. So we're going to kill the Head of Blight here. And then we're going to wait for and hope that Mischief pops up. So we got lucky here, and Mischief popped on out. But what we're going to do is we're going to keep the rotation going just as it would be. So Brogni's A2, Emic A2. In this case, if Naya has her A2 up, we want to use it on Emic so that we keep this rotation going. But eventually, we're going to use Naya's A3 to give an extra buff to everybody so that Wixwell has enough and Mischief tries to steal from Wixwell. So we're going to keep extending, keep the normal rotation going. Mischief is going to try to go after Krisk this whole time, but he has enough resist that we're going to be all good. Then we're going to get back around to Naya here. And Naya is going to have her A2 on cooldown, so you're going to use her A3. Wixwell is going to get that extra buff. And then we just hope that Mischief steals it from Wixwell. Now, this may take a few times because a number of them have 10 buffs. So Mischief is just going to be RNG on who they steal from. But we got super lucky. Mischief stole from Wixwell. So now we just got to wait for Mischief to spread the buffs across all the different heads before we do damage. And again, this might take a couple turns. Ideally, you don't want to hit into the head of Mischief directly since it has a counterattack up, but it will keep trying to hit Krisk, so you should be fine there. And then we have Yannica about to go. And what Yannica is going to do is she is going to use her A2 to make sure she's under Veil. We're going to hit one of the positive affinity heads, or same affinity heads. And then we're going to use her A3. And again, into one of the positive affinity heads. Now you can see here, because of the reflect damage or catching a weak hit or so on, we did 983 million damage, which is an absolute ton. But what we're going to do at this point is essentially hope that Mischief pops back out and we reset and do it all over again. Mischief's going to go after someone with the most buffs, so you make sure someone else has their buffs up. Or in this case, if Yannica is able to get back around to her A3 again, you can actually damage right into these shields. Not quite do as much damage, but damage right into these shields that are still there. So again, you're going to do about 1.2 billion on whatever key you do. That is the cap damage for one hit across all of the heads. But then if you get lucky, you can set it up where Mischief is going to pop back out, and you might be able to go at it again. We so far have had a clanmate who got 3 in one rotation. So did over 3 billion damage. So just keep that in mind. You can keep it going. There's no reason to just kill the key once you're done there. So that should give you the TLDR on the Wixwell Yannica team. If you have questions, feel free to post them below, and we'll be happy to help out. All right. I hope everybody has an awesome day. Thanks so much.